Propaganda is normally associated with a totalitarian government promoting itself, but it can equally mean consistently repeating a message in a myriad of forms to demote others. Soon after the Islamic Revolution, Western powers came to realize Iran wasn't going to work to their interest. So they tried to pull the chair away from under its new government. That is, they tried to pry away the government's main backing, the people. And this they tried to do by means of a message, actually a bombardment of messages. To see how, stay with me, Leila Faramarzi, on Iran Today. Mr. Momeniha is chief of the Cyber Studies Center of the Islamic world. He told of the means of advertising a message. How do Western governments try to get their message across to us, to our nation?
They are especially active on Twitter. You must know that they are financed by the US and dependent governments. Assured of their ineffectiveness in physical warfare, they are investing in soft war. Therefore, they are trying to disturb public opinion in our country through cyberspace. Israeli regime's newspapers are also moving in the same direction. You can see that some media funded by the Israeli regime are also trying to spread despair amongst the Iranian population.
In other words, the purpose of the message is to weaken the Iranian establishment by confusing the people into turning their backs on the system, even if they had nothing against it, to pry away the government's social capital. In pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal in 2018, US President Trump hurled back at Iran every sanction lifted and more. This economic maximum pressure campaign to make Iran bend to US demands has been paired up with a social media campaign. US officials say Trump has launched an offensive of speeches and online communications to foment unrest and put pressure on Iran, to pry away from the Iranian government, its main backing and social capital, the people. I got to talk to another media man on the matter, an editor actually. That would be Mr. Ajorlu.
A gap between the government and nation in Iran would undermine social assets, discredit and undermine the legitimacy of the government. That's their main objective. The Islamic Revolution granted a major role to people. Democratic gestures include general elections, gatherings and street protests. Therefore, the enemies hope to show it as unimportant and underestimated. All governments in power in the Islamic Republic must work towards bridging this gap, which is widened mainly by economic issues.
In what would be the Iranian government's better chance at holding on to and securing its social capital, I asked.
One
way for the government to build confidence and safeguard social assets is to show firm determination to combat corruption. Today, people are concerned with economic corruption in some sectors. People need to see the government fight seriously such corruption. Of course, the Islamic Republic is moving in such direction, and when people see the government is struggling for their rights by dealing with those pillaging the public treasury, confidence will be restored.
In 2018, a landmark bill presented to rejuvenate the country was the Violence Against Women Bill. In the same year, the Banking Bill was ratified. The latter's package of rules includes the Islamic Banking Bill, Central Bank of Iran Bill, and an initiative to establish the Islamic Republic of Iran Development Bank, as well as a scheme for rewriting the decades-old banking laws. It's a given. Iran still has social, economic and political problems, as does any country. But Iran's problems come with spice, not just by its own fault, but because this country has perpetually been the target of hegemonistic powers and unjustified sanctions. The country hasn't given up, however. High up on the agenda is battling corruption to better living standards. May the agenda be handled with muscle. As of August 2018, Iran's leader did refer to committers of economic corruption, saying they worked in line with the goals of the enemies. And this warrants instant and assertive confrontation, he said. And their legal cases are to be reviewed out of turn in lower courts, whose verdicts are to be final. Only death penalties can be protested within 10 days to the Supreme Court. It's not as if the jails have vacancies. I asked if corrupt big shots had actually been put away in equal conditions to everyone else.
Since taking office as head of judiciary, Ayatollah Raisi has been firm in fighting corruption. His team is seriously targeting those who have spread corruption in the country. The judiciary is looking for big fishes who have harmed the economy. We see that some of those who were involved in economic corruption in the past years are being put on trial now. One major cause of concern for people has been that those enjoying political or economic clout would not enjoy any privileges. Based on my own survey, I saw that the conditions are identical for an ordinary prisoner and a rich inmate. They may be held in the same cell.
The government also had signed a charter on citizens' rights with 120 articles to secure, say, freedom of speech and participating in demonstrations and communicating in cyberspace, as well as women's rights such as access to public environments and getting paid equally to men. This is news of 2017. Mr. Khoddadi is press deputy of the Culture Ministry. One important method Iran has thought for itself to improve the standard of living is to combat corruption. Have we jump-started that well?
The request for fighting corruption has always existed in our country. Anti-corruption drive depends on infrastructure in our country, which is becoming increasingly smarter. We are switching from a traditional bureaucratic system to an anti-corruption structure. You know that we have not joined the FATF, but still, if you want to transfer money between banks, you should declare the origin of your money. Therefore, the request for anti-corruption combat has not been imposed from outside, rather it's from inside. Fighting tax evasion is seriously on the agenda because one of our weaknesses is our structure that has facilitated corruption. Wherever corruption has been dealt with, the whole structure has been reformed.
There have been little gestures the system has been making to keep the nation content. For example, to train authorities and hence the nation on the coronavirus, an official website has been set up, corona.behdash.gov.ir. This is while the campaign by the Israeli Zionists and neocon Zionists who have infiltrated the White House, all powerhouses in the US actually, make it sound like Iran officially brought the coronavirus down on itself and is now faking statistics. It's not just Israel and Zionists tampering with facts, however.
I think that Western media has become part of the opposition. Media are expected to be somewhat neutral. However, what we see in the mainstream media, Iran International, Manoto, and BBC Persian, is sort of hostility against people. In other words, they're exploiting people's problems and calamities. It's disastrous to see some Iranians have become the enemy of their countrymen. It's appalling. It has been underway over the past 2 or 3 years, and it is now picking up speed. If this media has become part of the opposition, it has been due to the President Trump's policy. They thought that President Trump is after regime change in Iran, and this media thought they could be part of the regime change project. But today, they see that it has not happened.
As for living standards, to grant relief from inflation, 60 million of 80 million Iranians have been receiving a subsidy since the rise of petrol prices in November of 2019. Also, marriage loans are to be increased to 100 million tomans, that's $6,660. Some may call a lot of the measures too little too late, but they're in the right direction.
One key issue for governments is to have social assets which will largely contribute to the acceptability of government. The most significant issue in social assets is confidence. Governments who can build confidence with people, they would have the best social assets. Any government that cannot win public confidence in various sectors will fail.
One thing that has hit the economy and the people's lives drastically is the explosive price of the dollar or the implosive rial. This doesn't have so much to do with sanctions as with black market brokerage here. Hence, the NEMA system was launched to control and clarify the manner and amount of allocation of foreign exchange resources to companies. In July 2018, this integrated forex management system was launched to allow exporters of non-oil commodities to sell their foreign currency earnings to importers of consumer products. NEMA has some weaknesses, but its gaps can be filled through an integrated forex market aimed at exploring the real volume of demand and supply in the foreign currency market through a new mechanism, which is to organize the transactions in the foreign currency exchange market between the exchange bureaus.
Has the number of the poor in Iran increased or dropped? I would say it has dropped over the past 40 years. A good indicator is the breakout of the coronavirus in Iran. You live in a country hit by a crisis. The coronavirus remains unknown and it has caused a shock. Do you know any COVID-19 patient who has been abandoned in the street? Do you know any patient to have been admitted into a hospital without an ICU bed? Didn't the country manage to supply national needs during this shock while sanctions were in effect? They were like tests for the country. We proved to have been relatively successful in dealing with the COVID-19 outbreak. We did all this without having to deploy the military in the streets.
Generally, what would Western-affiliated media be saying about Iran, be it true or false, or just highly exaggerated? Financial corruption and human rights are two issues highlighted or exaggerated in Western media, at least English-speaking Western media. In fact, they talk of this still abundant country as if it were the only place on the planet with administrative corruption and hunger. And they present their fact and fiction combo as if it were 100% factual empirical data. Subtly, the Iranian nation was even portrayed or projected as terrorist, exactly in those years, the 1980s, when Saddam Hussein had attacked Iran and had a world rallied behind in his support.
What the mainstream media is doing, insisting that the Iranian government has done nothing and whatever done has been erroneous, it's made no achievements, people are dying from hunger and diseases in Iran. Well, this type of news making against the country is more like a mission assigned to these media outlets.
Time for a short break. We'll be back in no time. In a speech in Washington, 21st May 2018, U.S. Secretary of State Pompeo referred to funds freed by the nuclear deal, saying Iranian leaders refused to spend it on their people. Instead, they would use it for terrorism and wreaking havoc in the region. This is while just in March, the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency Director Robert Ashley had said social and economic expenditures remained Tehran's near-term priority, despite some spending on security forces. There's no denying there is a corruption within the system, but there are also those hands of the Iranian administration working tirelessly to combat corruption by promoting transparency. Major municipalities, for one, have all their contracts posted online now on websites such as shafaf.shiraz.ir or shafaf.tehran.ir. Why would professional Western media join forces with their governments in driving a rift between the Iranian people and their government?
Western media has sought to make people lose their confidence in the establishment. They might have been successful in certain sectors. In recent years, due to the spread of social media, they have redoubled their efforts and they managed to take advantage of the low media knowledge of certain people and insinuate what they had on mind in the society. They are focused on a variety of issues in recent years, as they are doing now with a view to separating people from the government.
Conflict of opinion in how Iran is being dealt with, treated even, is rife. Career diplomats in the US fear White House and State Department officials are contradicting themselves in rooting for regime change, when the state insists it is only out to help the Iranian people. Time for a quick break to hear it from other media outlets. For that, I give you Shahrzad.
Hi, my name is Sharzad Manucheri, and this is the news section of Iran Today. We'll be looking online for the latest update on the decades-old campaign by Western media to target Iran's social capital. Tehran Times reports there is no problem with Iran's statistics on coronavirus, according to the WHO. The World Health Organization's Director General, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, said that the organization has not noticed any problem with Iran's statistics on coronavirus outbreak. Some media have doubted the official statistics provided by the Iranian Health Ministry, citing the COVID-19 death toll in Iran is far exceeding that of official statistics. There are specific mechanisms for investigating the facts, the WHO official told CNBC. There are reports in the media, but here is the World Health Organization, which is a technical organization and needs to investigate the facts. We don't repeat what the reporters say. We have our own mechanism, and we haven't seen faults in the statistics. The level of Iran's transparency has taken many by surprise, including some media outlets, which are known for their siding with Iran's enemies, and their support for sanctions that have come to target Iranians, including Iranian patient Kianush Jahanpour, head of the Iranian Health Ministry's public relations, stated, referring to the BBC Persian and similar media organizations. The Nation investigates how the US media demonizes Iran. Imagine an Iranian drone had been shot down over Florida or just off its coast. Rather than arguing about its exact position, we would surely be shocked at its presence almost 7,000 miles from Iran. But on June 20th, Iran downed a US drone that had come close to its territory, according to the Pentagon, or violated its airspace, according to Tehran, and almost nobody asked if the US military presence in the Persian Gulf was justified. The inversion of reality, which favors US military might, is strengthened by selective political memory and by the media's lies of omission. Who in the West remembers Iran Air Flight 655? On July 3, 1988, the USS Vincennes, patrolling in Iranian territorial waters, downed an airliner with 290 passengers en route for Dubai. The United States initially denied responsibility, then claimed that the Vincennes was in international waters and that the Airbus, which it had mistaken for a fighter jet, was descending towards it in a threatening manner. The United States later admitted that both statements were untrue. In an article by IRNA chief, we see how Western media do not show the real image of Iran. Managing Director of the Islamic Republic news agency, IRNA, said Western media, especially the American ones, which are affected by political bigotry and interests, do not portray a real image of Iran and its developments in scientific, economic, cultural, and political fields. Over the last 4 decades, we have observed U.S. animosity against Iranians, especially in imposing cruel sanctions, he added, stressing the fact that the Iranian government and people have so far passed by many obstacles and are moving towards economic stability. Hashemi said we expect important media in the world, especially those which have offices in Tehran, to present realities of Iran. That's all for this segment. We'll see you next week.
One might wonder, is corruption actually above the average acceptable world standard in Iran? Be it or not, there is no corruption yardstick compatible with Iranian culture and laws. So at best, corruption measurements and rankings are library statistics, not facts on the ground.
For example, on the 40th anniversary of the victory of the Islamic Revolution, there was speculation in social media that Global had conducted an opinion poll and survey showing that Iran ranked the last amongst 206 nations in terms of livelihood. What they intended to say was that the Iranian government does not pay attention to people's livelihood. However, through a simple search, we found that such survey had never been conducted, and everything we heard on social media was totally false. In recent years, even if an official has committed an offense, this media has sought to attribute it to the entire establishment. Offenders may emerge in all governments, but Western media try to link it with the entire establishment.
A country with a 1 million strong population could not be compared with a country of 1 billion. And then speak about social justice. Everything is relative. Also, sometimes we have to define horizons for us. Sometimes you may ignore some of your desires in favor of a better future. Our country should also be looked at from the same standpoint. We are a country of over 80 million people, and we are located in a geographically sensitive area. The outstanding feature of our region is instability. Security and stability is limited to our own country.
Evaluations of, say, corruption levels should be adapted locally, because what's illegal or socially unacceptable in one country isn't in another. For example, a major indication of corruption is bribery. Iran has greatly battled bribery in offices and succeeded. But in an old bureaucratic system, bribes can act as a bonus or overtime incentive pay. Looking at Iran's global standing overall in comparing 2003 to 2019, we can see that the country has scored historic geopolitical victories. This safe country in a volatile region is now a dominant power in West Asia or the Middle East while maintaining calm at home. It is known to have managed to determine the time, place and nature of escalations in the Persian Gulf and to neutralize the positions of the UAE and Saudi Arabia in their leaning towards the US. While the media's mission is professional, unbiased journalism, who they're doing it for matters, because that's what gives the message its edge and shapes audiences' minds. And the US and allies are nothing short of media that targets Persian-speaking audiences. America has for decades invested heavily in shaping Iranian minds, for example in the VOA Persian News Network. VOA PNN started broadcast on 18 October 1994. In April 2007, it conducted a phone interview with Rigi, introducing him as the leader of a popular resistance movement. That was none other than Jundullah, which was later designated as a foreign terrorist organization in 2010 by the US.
They are pursuing their government's objectives. In general, media across the globe are supporting governments. In some cases, these governments are pursuing their soft diplomacy through their media. They insinuate their objectives into the society through media. However, the media may try to influence other societies too, as we see how they have been trying to cause despair in Iran. They are pursuing this objective through social media.
News as well as rumor spreads like wildfire, and now with social media, it's wildfire infused with petrol. Spearheading social media campaigns are the MKO and the Pro-Pahlavi cluster. As reported in 2019, the MKO, what was once Iran's Mujahideen organization, but now is a terror group that sided with the enemy during the Iraq-Iran war, posted over 44,000 tweets in 18 months, roughly 70 times a day. That is a level that indicates inauthentic activity. The MKO is despised by Iranians, but they anonymously bombard the nation's minds with messages that appear convincing at first glance.
I feel regret that the Persian media network outside Iran, whose objective is not persuading people to struggle for a better life, rather it seeks to offer unilateral analysis of Iran's domestic affairs. As a journalist, it is totally incomprehensible for me for a media to receive money from a nation to work against another nation. How is it possible that Saudi Arabia would pay for journalists covering Iran's affairs? What are Saudi interests here? What is their objective? If we do so, we would definitely announce our mission. But what's their mission? When you look into the content of news, you see that it is just holding a negative view of developments.
And they have a soft but most lethal weapon with which to imprint on minds and shape political decisions: the message disseminated by the media.
Major international media is run by governments. For instance, the BBC is funded by the British monarchy. When they receive their budget from their government, they have to follow the state policy. That prevents them from telling the truth in many instances. In recent years, some journalists have dared to express something contrary to the policy of the media they work with about a political, social or cultural issue. We have seen repeatedly that after they post such things on their Twitter or Instagram accounts, they are expelled immediately. The so-called freedom of expression highlighted in the West is disproven in dealing with journalists. They do not tolerate any word contrary to their general policy.
That's it for today. Thanks for watching from the whole team. Do watch again at the same times next week and each week after. You never know what's on. And don't forget to leave your comments and topic requests. Bye for now.